Hello, everybody. Dan and I have a fun conduct detrimental podcast coming your way right now. We're starting off discussing Aaron Hernandez's not guilty verdict on a double homicide case from 2013. We're going to move right along to the Eli Manning email and lawsuit over alleged fake memorabilia sold. And finally, we're going to touch on the lawsuit filed by the city of St. Louis against the NFL and the teams over the relocation of the then St. Louis Rams. And now a little brass bonanza for you. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Conduct Detrimental Podcast. This is your co-host, Dan Worley. I'm joined by Daniel Wallach, who's currently having internet issues and is located on the floor outside of his gym. The man is a trooper. Dan, how are you?
Thanks for that intro. This is, I don't know if my bill was unpaid or what happened with AT&T, but blame AT&T for it. So we've been 4 weeks or so without a podcast. So I was desperate to make tonight happen. So I'm taking one for the team. I'm sitting down in the lobby area outside of my fitness center because it is the only open, free Wi-Fi connection in the building. And let's just hope we don't get a crowd of teenagers coming into the building during our episode.
Or someone,
it's good to be back.
Deadlifting in there and just dropping weights. But yeah, it's good to be back. We apologize, everyone. We've been kind of crazy on some other stuff, but we're back and we'll be putting out episodes regularly moving forward. We have a whole heck of a lot going on in the sports law world this past week. We had a big verdict in the Aaron Hernandez case. We have this Eli Manning controversy, and we have the city of St. Louis trying to take on the entire NFL. So, Dan, let's start with the Aaron Hernandez stuff. First off, were you surprised by the not guilty verdict?
No, it always hinged on the eyewitness testimony of somebody with a seedy past. He was I don't know if he was a convicted drug dealer, but Alex Bradley was basically the linchpin of this entire prosecution. And unlike the first criminal trial where they had surveillance video and they were tracking Aaron Hernandez's movements, here they only had the testimony of a single witness, which is a much harder climb, I think, at least from the jury's perspective, from a credibility perspective, to have nothing else but this one person. It seemed like an uphill battle. I expected a conviction nonetheless, so I am surprised by the outcome, but it's explainable when you consider the evidence that the Commonwealth relied on. Right. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say going into the trial, I was fairly sure that there was going to be a guilty verdict by the end of it, but having kind of followed the trial from a distance and seeing what was being reported, the further I got along, the further I thought the not guilty possibility was out there. And I think you phrased it just the way I did. I was thinking about it. I mean, this is beyond a reasonable doubt standard. I mean, put yourself in the jury's shoes. You're really counting on one witness who the other side actually has a theory out there who was the one who actually killed the two people in the case. So you're thinking to yourself, is it beyond a reasonable doubt that this guy's telling the truth, that this guy who's getting immunity from the prosecutors to testify here today against this other guy? And you can kind of see how they came out that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that Aaron's criminal defense counsel was the same lawyer who represented Casey Anthony, Jose Baez, and he trotted out a similar theory to kind of pin the death of, KYRIE on, somebody else. And, while it was enough to create reasonable doubt in the Casey Anthony trial, it likewise created sufficient doubt in the jury's mind here. But I think the judge gave the defense a helping hand with one of his answers to a jury question. The jury asked him during the deliberations whether they could rely solely on Bradley's testimony or whether they needed corroborating evidence. And the judge erroneously suggested that they needed corroborating evidence. And obviously that's not grounds for an appeal here because it's an acquittal, but that answer may have tipped the balance in favor of Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really think that Jose Baez is really the big winner here. He's now got to be one of the most famous criminal defense attorneys in the country based on, these two cases. And is going to be the go-to guy for any high-profile client moving forward, I would imagine. In really
murder cases only. Believe it or not, sure. He had no criminal trial experience before taking on Casey Anthony's case, or he had very limited criminal trial experience. His background and career as a criminal defense attorney is extremely limited, but now he's got two major wins in his pocket, and I think nationally he becomes the go-to, criminal defense counsel of choice for a high-profile prosecution, at least on the defense side. I mean, these are two big wins. The former of which, the Casey Anthony case, was against all odds. I mean, that was a shocking result. This one not so shocking, but he has two, big notches in his belt now.
Yep. And it's interesting to think about whether Hernandez was actually a big winner here or not. I mean, he's got a life in jail sentence for the Odin Lloyd case. He actually was convicted of one crime here, a weapons possession crime, where he's going to get 4 to 5 years.
Yep, that's important.
Which is important and which was really kind of not reported very much around the media. But now the issue really comes, they have this appeal going on in the Odin Lloyd case. Do you have any thoughts on that, Dan? Have you dug into the issues there? I know that it's still in the preliminary stages. There was some interesting back and forth that I read between the two sets of lawyers. The one that's currently representing Hernandez in his appeal, and then Baez and his team, who seems to want to get in on that appeal, but I'm not so sure that the other lawyers are going to have it or not. There was some interesting quotes there. What are your thoughts on the appeal?
Well, Baez should Jose Baez should go nowhere near the appeal. That's not his wheelhouse. He's a trial lawyer, and it takes a different skill set to successfully advance an appeal in a first degree murder conviction. This is a very specialized area of the law, and those lawyers who practice in the area of criminal appeals have a very specific skill set, and I think you need Massachusetts. Concentrated expertise to be able to, pull this off. Yeah. But, no matter what happens, Aaron Hernandez is not going to get anywhere near an NFL, field ever again. I mean, this first degree conviction went down in 2015, and here we are 2 years later. The appeal still hasn't been briefed. Even if let's assume best case scenario for Aaron Hernandez and the conviction is overturned, he'll just be getting a new trial. And that will be a year from now, 2 years from now. The wheels of justice, even if Aaron rolls a lucky 7, are going to take him into his early 30s, which is beyond the prime age of an NFL caliber tight end. And even if he were a free man today, no NFL team would ever take him. Yeah,
I agree. And you think about that, and even if he does somehow miraculously win this appeal, and the odds are certainly against him. We talked about this earlier. There was some pretty strong evidence in that case against him, and some video surveillance, some other evidence tying him to the scene, where he, even if he wins his appeal, he could go back in front of a jury and they could just convict him again.
And he still has to serve the 4 to 5 years on the unlawful gun possession in the in trial number 2, in which he won every count except for the gun possession.
Right.
So he's going to be in jail unless they can overturn that on appeal as well. I mean, Aaron Hernandez is going to have to clear some very significant hurdles in the appellate courts to be able to walk out of jail as a free man before his 31st or 32nd birthday, and I don't see that happening. His NFL career will have passed him by.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's move on to the big blow-up story from this week out of New York. I feel like New York has just been providing tons of sports law content this year the last year, I should say, with Oakley, Derrick Rose. Now we have Eli Manning in the mix. This is a pretty big headline. What do you think of the emails? Let's talk about this case. This case has actually been around now since 2014, and it was a criminal case before that. So, what do you make of the newly breaking news?
Well, I mean, the Eli Manning email essentially corroborates or helps confirm the memorabilia collectors, prime allegations against the Giants and their trainers. I mean, this has been a dirty deal from the very beginning. I'm surprised that the Giants would allow a case like this to remain out there when the amount of controversy. We're talking about the reputation of the memorabilia dealers, but if you look at all the jerseys that are alleged to be, or the helmets and jerseys that are alleged to be not, bona fide or authentic, these dealers lost, maybe in the neighborhood of the high five figures. This case has the potential to create much greater damage to the goodwill of the Giants and the reputation of Eli Manning. And I'm amazed that this never settled. In fact, forget settlement. It became scorched earth. The Giants pursued, or the Giants, tried to get federal indictments brought against this memorabilia dealer. I think his name is Eisenberg, and the U.S. Attorney's Office dropped the criminal case because there were some concerns that some of the Giant employees were perjuring themselves during the grand jury testimony. So this has the potential, I think, to make the Giants or harm the Giants brand much worse than harming Eli Manning's brand. But his reputation has been someone who's a straight arrow, honest person. He works with charities. He's one of the real good people, not only in the New York sports scene, but on the national sports scene. And the damage that's going to be done to him and to his brand outweighs any. All people are going to remember is this email. And, I don't think this is going to end up very good for the Giants. There could be repercussions within the NFL because this whole deal of trainers and team employees selling game-worn jerseys and helmets, or even fabricating the fact that these are game-worn jerseys and helmets, I think it should cause the league and the teams to kind of monitor this situation a lot more closely and not allow this to happen because it has created a mess for the Giants.
Yeah, it is a mess. And I would venture to guess that the plaintiffs don't agree with your damages computation. I think you're probably right, but there are these claims
it's reputation.
out there.
It's the loss of the reputation, which makes it a seven-figure case.
Sure, but I mean, from a monetary damages perspective, he's claiming that he has also these patents that are worth $12 million for helmet technology. He's claiming that he's owed a royalty for introducing the Giants to Chase Bank executives that ultimately ended up in them receiving a sponsorship, a $10 million plus sponsorship from JP Morgan Chase.
A 101-page complaint lays out so many interconnected and intertwined relationships between the dealer, the Giants, the trainers that sold him the jerseys. I think that's kind of muddying up the waters.
Sure.
I mean, this memorabilia dealer is all of a sudden going to have, the cure for, developing helmets that are going to prevent concussions. That seems like a little bit of a reach and kind of speculative.
Absolutely. I'm just saying from his lawyer's perspective, they know that this is a bombshell for the Giants team, for Eli Manning's reputation. And so even if they're offering five-figure settlements at this point, which who knows if they ever were, I'm sure that they're not taking that deal right now or the last 3 years. So I'm just trying to make the point that this is it's sort of not surprising this is dragging on so far. And we look down the road. This is set for a September 25th trial. September 25th, the first month of the NFL season. It's going to get heated between now and then. There's going to be a lot more back and forth. And if this thing does go to trial, we're looking at another in-season trial of a player, of a team, in the biggest market in the U.S. Would be a huge deal.
Yeah, well, I mean, the case is pending in Bergen County, New Jersey, right in the heart of Giants country. So it wouldn't surprise me that the judge, would eventually grant a continuance through the NFL offseason. I mean, I don't see this case going to trial. I mean, listen, I'm not following the case so closely. I don't even know who the judge is, but it would shock me that this trial would emerge in the midst of the regular season while Eli Manning is playing quarterback for the New York Giants, unless we're talking about a bye week here, and he could give testimony on his either on his day off or on the 1 or 2 days during the bye week.
You're forgetting one scenario, Dan. If the judge is a Jets fan.
Well, so you and I have litigated and worked off of scheduling orders and pretrial orders, and we all know that trial dates are aspirational, and in federal court in particular, judges are very hesitant to grant continuances. In state court, it seems somewhat more flexible and pliable, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this trial not occur at all in 2017. But you're right. The damages at issue here are, predominantly reputational. This person is one of the most, prominent memorabilia dealers, and the Giants tried to have him, characterized as an outright fraud. So, the malicious prosecution count in particular seems somewhat troublesome in that the Giants may have encouraged perjured testimony in front of a grand jury, which is serious problem. And I think even more concerning to the Giants is that the United States Postal Service and the United States Attorney's Office have open investigations, which are not 3 years or 4 years old, but seem like relatively new developments. So that's the bigger concern for the Giants, for Manning, for the trainers, and all the participants, even the dry cleaner. I was fascinated that the Giants have this dry cleaner since 1982, Bob Barone, great name, right? He must be from Bayonne, New Jersey, right? Great name. And what he does is at his dry cleaning establishment, he beats up jerseys to make them look game worn. I mean, this is a conspiracy, and I wouldn't say a conspiracy, but this has been happening. If the Giants, as an organization, did not conduct this kind of operation, they at least ratified it and appeared to be fully aware of what was going on here. So, this I think is going to continue to remain an issue for the Giants, and they better hope that the criminal authorities, the U.S. Attorney's Office, U.S. Postal Service, don't bring forth indictments, because what started out as a minor matter could potentially mushroom into a major problem for the organization, and it could spill over and result in NFL discipline. I mean, we are talking about the integrity of the team, the integrity of the league, and this is a problem that seems chronic throughout the NFL, where trainers and team employees are selling jerseys and helmets to memorabilia dealers.
Yeah. I found it fascinating to kind of look through. And, we're hearing still mostly one side of the story. Obviously, the Giants and Manning are denying things, but there is some fairly concrete evidence that they've shown already. The emails, Eli's emails, there's trainer emails that agree that admit that some of it is BS, I believe is the quote in the email. They have, according to them, they have thousands, but there's a handful of pictures attached to the complaint, and one picture will show what's supposed to be the game-worn helmet, and then one is the picture of Eli in the game itself, and it shows the sticker arrangement, any screws in the helmet, and they're different. They're clearly different. So, assuming that those are authentic pictures of the actual game and of the actual helmet they got, that's pretty strong evidence, in my opinion, that will be obviously thrown up in front of a jury if it gets to that point.
I think the Giants have a spoliation of evidence problem as well, because Eli Manning produced these emails pretty easily, but the Giants had no document retention policy in place. Obviously, as far back as 2010, maybe they weren't aware that this would ultimately rise to the level of a criminal or a civil liability issue where they would have to retain their emails. But what are they doing? They're purging their email accounts, because these emails should easily, be able to be extracted from a server. I mean, I don't know if they need to retain the information as so much as go into their server and try to dig it out. So I wonder whether the plaintiffs in this case will seek sanctions against the Giants.
Yeah, it seems pretty cutthroat. So That wouldn't be a surprising move. I want to go back to the point of the NFL suspension. This will be a fascinating case, assuming that, let's just say, for assumption's sake, that this is proven and Eli is found guilty or somehow admits...
Generally aware.
Generally aware. It'll be really fascinating to see what Roger Goodell does in this case, right? I mean, and you have to compare it to, of course, the other big quarterback case, Deflategate. But I could see Goodell saying that this isn't suspension worthy, and Patriots fans will probably get very angry at this. But really, I think this doesn't impact the play on the field. This is a total off the field running the team issue. This is a fine issue. This isn't a suspension issue, as opposed to what was perceived to be Brady's infraction, which was, trying to get a competitive advantage on the field itself. It seems like that's sort of the distinction he makes in similar cases. What do you think about the possibility of an Eli Manning suspension?
Well, I have to agree completely with you. I mean, that's where you draw the line and distinguish between the two situations. They both impact the integrity of the league, but Deflategate, as unproven as it was and as controversial as it was, did have a direct tie to to the conduct of the game on the field. May not have impacted it, but Eli Manning's dealings with memorabilia dealers and selling of the game-worn jerseys has nothing to do with what transpires on the field of play. And I don't believe it's suspension-worthy. It may be heavily fine-worthy, though. And I know that's not going to make New England Patriots fans happy, because I have to say, as soon as I tweeted Kajah Whitehouse's exclusive on Friday night, Patriots fans, had a field day with it, and they all wanted to see a suspension of Eli Manning. So I know there's going to be accusations of preferential treatment and disappointment when the penalties do come down. But I think they're going to be strictly monetary, and I would think the league will have to revisit its policy and not leave it to the teams as to how to control the use or dissemination and sale of these jerseys and helmets. I think the league needs to monitor this situation much more closely and come out with some kind of a policy, because there are the trainers and all the different staff that are enriching themselves with essentially the trademark of the teams in the National Football League. I mean, it's gone on, at least within the Giants organization, through generations of trainers, and the Giants were well aware of it, and actually accepted it as part of the culture within the organization. But I think Roger Goodell, if he's wise and if the teams are smart, they'll try to restrict. Restrict who comes into contact with these kinds of jerseys and helmets and other forms of equipment, and not allow them to be sold on the secondary market.
Yeah, it would be it'd be easy to put a policy in place, but I think it would be tough to enforce it, just because I'm sure every team's set up slightly differently, and these are employees that are relatively low-level employees, and a player like Eli has an exclusive contract with Steiner and has to give him basically everything. So he's going to make it work how he has to, apparently. So that will be interesting to see what happens from the NFL's perspective on both fronts, whether there's a suspension. I could see this if this were something that really, really blows up and the Giants employees are really shown to be not looking great here. I mean, maybe this is a draft pick issue as well, in addition to a fine. I could see that, but I don't know. I just can't see him suspended for games, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, nor can I see him testifying in a trial. I mean, Eli Manning would not...
Eli face?
Yeah, I mean, this email is so, you might debate whether it's a smoking gun or not, but he's not the kind of individual that I think the last place the Giants want to see him is on a witness stand. What the Giants and Eli have going for them is basically, home cooking here. They're in a state superior or state civil court, but I don't know that they're going to get any preferential treatment from a local jury pool because, as you pointed out, the judge is a Jets fan, and I don't think any of that matters in court. Most of the jurors are going to be screened for biases and whether they have season tickets or are Giants fans. But I think it would behoove the team, maybe at the urging of the NFL, to settle this case, even if it required, a high six-figure payment or a low seven-figure payment. The damage to the Giants' brand and to their reputation is only going to get worse the further this goes out.
Yeah, I agree. Talk about big fans. This Inselberg fellow, who's the plaintiff in the lawsuit, was a massive fan. He apparently at one point donated roughly $1 million worth of merchandise back to the New York Giants to set up their sort of in-stadium museum. And as I mentioned earlier, had tried to get them various corporate sponsorships and was very good friends with a lot of these people. And then they completely turned on him. If these allegations are true, you really kind of feel for this guy because he was such a huge fan. Now he's suing his favorite team and presumably one of his favorite players. An interesting scenario.
Yeah, I mean, he's not an ordinary, disgruntled memorabilia dealer like who's just another face in the crowd. He's somebody that had at one time and for many years, a very close relationship with the organization going all the way up to John Mara. And at some point, everything unraveled. And this comes across to me as, both sides appear to be dug in. I mean, you don't draft a 101-page complaint basically to, make a score of 5 figures or 6 figures. This is basically his career and his livelihood, which has been placed in jeopardy by these accusations and by, maybe a false, federal investigation, aided by perjured testimony. So I think they're going for the jugular, and the comments from the Giants over the past week to explain Eli Manning's email painted him as basically, chasing a payday. And I think the relationship between the two sides could not be worse at this juncture. So maybe it doesn't settle so quickly. Yep.
Great point. All right. You ready to move on to the Rams lawsuit?
Yes, the Rams. That is
Talk about sour grapes.
Maybe not. Maybe it becomes the template for the city of Oakland and the city of San Diego. I mean, there's really a lot at play here. This lawsuit could potentially be a model for other cities to follow, depending on how the outcome goes.
Yeah. So just to take a step back, the city of St. Louis and the Rams stadium sued the NFL. They sued the now Los Angeles Rams. They sued every other team in the NFL for millions of dollars. I don't know. Did they specify damages amount? I don't remember off the top of my head, but
I think the numbers that I've seen close to 100 million. I think but there are two categories of damages. There are the hard costs of what the city of St. Louis and the stadium authority had to lay out to prepare proposals and bids. But the plaintiffs also want to disgorge the NFL's profits and the Rams' profits relating to the move to Los Angeles, and that's where the number could potentially get big because the value of the Rams has gone up astronomically, since moving from St. Louis to Los Angeles. So this could easily be a nine-figure, a mid to high nine-figure case, if not more. But maybe not.
Yeah, and basically what the St. Louis is alleging is that the NFL violated its own relocation policy, that the LA Rams ownership and the NFL were never genuinely interested in keeping the team in St. Louis, although that they would publicly say that they were. Behind the scenes, that they were doing everything they could to get them out because, as we've seen, a team in LA is more valuable than a team in St. Louis. I don't think anyone can dispute that at this point. And so they came in and they sued for breach of contract. They sued for unjust enrichment. And the first thought that ran through my head was, how the heck are they going to have standing for a breach of contract that they are not a party to?
Well, Dan, I was thinking about this earlier. Could they make a case that they're a third-party beneficiary
Yeah, that's
to the
what they're
NFL's relocation policy?
so that's what they're alleging. So the NFL Constitution, and a part of that, the relocation policy, is obviously a contract between the teams and the NFL and essentially the players as well. A city doesn't fit into that equation, but if you look at the rule behind a third-party beneficiary is that they can sue if the contract is designed to benefit them directly. So the question is, was this relocation policy designed to benefit the city of St. Louis directly? And I actually think there's a pretty good argument that it is. The relocation policy was drafted after litigation, I believe over the Raiders move the first time, and it was designed to sort of make sure there was a process in place for when teams were moving and make sure that they followed a fair process. And to me, that sort of policy is designed to protect a former city, right, like St. Louis. And I'm sure the NFL is going to come up with a great argument the other way, and I think there's room for a smart argument on either side. So this will be a really, really fascinating issue, and I think this is going to be one of the really big first hurdles of this case because, if they're not found to be a third-party beneficiary, then there really is no breach of contract claim at all.
Right. And keeping this case in the St. Louis state court system would be beneficial for the plaintiff's theory of the case. Obviously, a judge will make the determination in the first instance as a matter of law whether this relocation policy, grants or confers a third-party beneficiary status on the city of St. Louis and the stadium authority. But it might be more beneficial to have this matter heard by a state court judge rather than a federal court judge.
Sure.
What do you think of standing? Do you think standing is going to be a barrier for the city and for the stadium authority?
Well, I mean, I think those kind of go hand in hand. What we just talked about, whether they have standing to sue,
on any claim,
right? On any claim, right? This is so obviously the one that we just talked about is only to the first claim, the breach of the relocation policy claim, but they also have claims for unjust enrichment. Hold on, I'm bringing it up right now.
How about promissory estoppel?
Fraudulent misrepresentation. We're getting real deep into legal terms now. I'm sure our non-lawyer listeners love this.
This is detrimental reliance.
Right. I think it's an issue. I think it's less of an issue. This is a case where the NFL is going to fight tooth and nail to get this thing kicked out on a motion to dismiss stage before discovery because, I think there could be some really damaging discovery in this case. When you think about the potential emails between the Rams owners at the time or currently Kroenke and the NFL, and internal NFL emails discussing the move and talking about how they just want to get into a new market. They're sort of disingenuously going through this process. Those would be really bad for this case. And it's not hard to imagine that something in that vein exists. And so, I think that the NFL is going to try to do everything it can to stay out of that stage. But the issue is, I don't see this as really a settleable case, right? I mean, I think, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe, if the NFL put a huge dollar figure up to the city of St. Louis, they would take it. But this seems to be more of a case based on principle. And
pound of flesh. They want their pound of flesh.
Yeah, and they want their day in court. And so, to the extent that we get past this first hurdle, some of these procedural standing third-party beneficiary issues, this will be a really fascinating case moving forward.
Yeah, I think the NFL, as we've learned, is not a big fan of the discovery process, right? They settle the NFL concussion lawsuit before there's any discovery. Even to this day, I'm not sure that the insurers that they're in litigation with have obtained any significant discovery. So the NFL will avail itself of every pre-discovery dismissal tactic. They're going to, I think they're going to try to remove the case to federal court.
Yep.
I'm not sure if the Kansas City Chiefs, who are based in Missouri, are one of the defendants. But even if they are, maybe the teams themselves try to get dismissed from the case to create complete diversity, so that the NFL could remove the case to federal court. I see that as one tactic. I see motions to dismiss for lack of standing and for failure to state a cause of action. But this has been the issue over the relocation of the Rams dates back to 1994, 1995. There was prior litigation between the St. Louis Stadium Authority and the NFL over the efforts to move the Rams, the LA Rams, from LA to St. Louis. And I don't know if too many people are aware of this, but the St. Louis Stadium Authority paid most of the relocation fee at the time. Just to show you how long ago this was, the relocation fee was only $29 million. And I think the relocation fee now is like $500 million. Well, of that $29 billion, 20 of it was paid by the city of St. Louis. So I think the city of St. Louis has a real strong argument to make that they should have standing to bring claims against the NFL over the relocation by virtue of the fact that they paid $20 million on the expectation that they would have a franchise until the 2024 season. And with the rug pulled out from under the city, I think they have a very good argument that they are aggrieved, especially since they were required to pay the bulk of the relocation fee.
Yeah, and I think the hunt into federal court, the attempt to remove the case in the federal court will be an interesting one to follow too. Obviously, that would be a much more favorable court for the NFL and the teams to be in. I do think that at some point the teams are going to try to get themselves out of this case, as they don't have as much to do with it. I'm interested in sort of what this lawsuit could potentially do to future relocations of teams, right? I mean, if you're looking at a situation where there's, 9-figure potential legal liabilities involved, there's $9.5 billion relocation fees. There's all these costs going into relocation of teams. We've seen 3 now in the last 2 years. But will this flurry kind of come to an end at this point? Is it just going to be too cost prohibitive for teams to move where it just doesn't make sense anymore? In my opinion, it's kind of a good thing. I'd rather have teams staying places, but I don't know whether the lawsuit itself will be an issue. And let's say that the Rams, or let's say the city of Los Angeles wins this lawsuit. I mean, does that is that a TRO injunction issue that teams in the future will be able to keep a team from actually moving before they do?
I think so. I think the possibility exists. I think the ramifications of this case aren't the money that the city of St. Louis gets, because whether it's $100 million, $400 million, $800 million, the league will write a check, okay? But how this could play out in future relocations or potentially impact the situations in San Diego and Oakland, it could have an impact on the decision-making process that the league and the teams undertake going forward. Because if they're going to be sued every time a team relocates and they lose these cases, that will offset whatever increase in value or whatever economic benefit comes from the relocation. I mean, the NFL voted in favor of the Raiders moving to Las Vegas, and the Rams going back to Los Angeles because it was economically beneficial, not only to those ownership groups, but to the league as a whole. And if they're having to, pay 9 figures or 10 figures worth of monetary damages, I think this could have the effect of maybe chilling the quick trigger on leaving, one city for another. But I don't know how many more candidates there are. I mean, we've had 3 within the last year. I don't know if there are any stadium situations that are ripe for potential relocation. So this might really be about the 3 current situations and not really so much about any future ones over the next couple of years. But as we've seen in the history of the NFL, franchises extort their cities for free money with the threat of relocating. So whether or not any of these situations ever come to pass, They are an effective piece of leverage for teams to extract, free public money. And if the city of St. Louis is successful here, this could roll back that tactic and basically act as a precedent that cities could use in the future when they're basically have a gun held to their head.
Yeah, and I agree that I can't think of any off the top of my head sort of other current teams.
Jacksonville, potentially. There's always talk of Jacksonville being the first team to be based in London.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that although we maybe don't have the team that's going to be moved, and I think Jacksonville is possible. I think they have a relatively new stadium, though. The destination city, as you mentioned, they're already testing it out. There's actually an article up right now on my website, The White Bronco, about London being the potential next relocation city. There's a whole other set of issues that goes along with an international move and the logistics of all that. But, I think that's something that the NFL is clearly at least somewhat interested in the future. Maybe not next year, maybe not the year after that, but within maybe 5 years is getting into that European market, which has been wildly successful so far. They sell out those games. There's a lot of interest over there. It's on a pretty small level right now, but that's one to definitely keep in mind. I just, what we know is that there may not be a team, but there's always going to be one in the future because, eventually taxpayers just don't want to pay for, especially if there's an economy downslide. They're not going to want to pay these extra taxes to finance a stadium, and the owners are going to hold them hostage. And eventually, like we've seen over these past few years, someone's going to flinch and they're going to move. Yeah. So,
but I think the league has gotten greedy, and the owners have gotten greedy, and
the NFL greedy. What?
Yeah, some of the underhanded tactics here with Jerry Jones. Saying one thing in public and then behind closed doors, trying to engineer these moves, and he might have a personal financial interest in this because he is an owner. His company, Legendary or Legends Hospitality, will have the contracts at these new stadiums. So I think we've entered the time where maybe the NFL is ready to face another significant defeat in court over the relocation. When the Raiders sued them, and there were antitrust claims, that litigation led the NFL to revise and promulgate objective criteria for evaluating relocations. This is a step in another direction. Now that the NFL has standards and they're not applying them, this could really. This is a bigger case than just damages. The precedent that could be created by the NFL by this court decision, whether it ends up in federal court or state court, I think could be a template for cities to use in future litigation. So I think Oakland in particular. I don't know so much about San Diego, but I think Oakland might have a very good case here because the market was supporting the Raiders. I mean, that is one of the most passionate fan bases in the country, and Oakland kept making every effort up until the 11th hour to put out different stadium plans. Unfortunately, the NFL, went for the best deal rather than trying to protect the local market.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Dan, we made it through. You're still on the floor by the gym, but we survived. It was good to be back. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Any final remarks, Mr. Wallach?
Yeah, just congratulations on your new law firm. I think the last time we did an episode, your law firm, Sievert Worley, if it was in existence, wasn't known to the public yet. So congratulations on your new business venture.
Thank you, sir.
And I wish you a lot of luck with that. And looking forward to reading about you in the sports law pages. Maybe we'll have you on as a guest if you can get one of those big cases.
It would be awkward, multiple personalities or something. Yeah, but it's been exciting. We've been launched now for just about a month. I recently moved to Nashville, Tennessee, so we're based here in Nashville. And it's like Dan mentioned, we're a small law firm, but we are focused on the sports industry clients. So we have a few already, and we're moving right along. So it's been a fun ride, and looking forward to getting back on a regular schedule with the Conduct Detrimental podcast.